Good evening. Everybody's quiet. There we go. There's some life out there. Well, let's stand this evening and we'll start our worship service off with that song, I Just Keep Falling in Love with Him, over and over and over and over again. I keep falling in love with Him over and over and over and over again. And I keep falling in love with Him over and over and over and over again. He gets sweeter and sweeter as the days go by. Oh, what a love between my Lord and I. Just keep falling in love with Him over and over and over and over again. And I keep falling in love with Him over and over and over and over again. I keep falling in love with Him over and over and over and over again. He gets sweeter and sweeter as the days go by. Oh, what a love between my Lord and I. Just keep falling in love with Him over and over and over and over again. Every day with Jesus is sweeter than the day before. Every day with Jesus I Thank you. You may be seated.
Good to have Curtis back. Welcome back home. Good to see all the teens here tonight. Y'all have a good class. Brother Justin's going to be preaching for me tonight, but before he comes, just a couple of things I do want to mention. Tim and I will be traveling to Kansas, Ark City, Kansas tomorrow. I'm going to be preaching tomorrow night and Friday morning, pastor's conference. So I've been preparing 4 messages and getting them ready this week, and so I appreciate Brother Justin filling in for me tonight. And so pray for our traveling mercies and pray that we can be a help and encouragement there in Kansas. And so one other thing, now the teams are out, did you see all the kids? There's a lot of them. I think Tim told me before church there's about 4 or more that are unsaved that are here tonight. And Tim is starting the Gospel Salvation Bible Study that I use, and he's starting it tonight with the teens. So pray for them. And that's encouraging. He said one of the girls just finished Catholic Catechism, and so it's good timing. And our youth have invited these people to come, and so thank the Lord for that. All right, I want to go ahead and pray for him, and then I'm going to turn it over to Brother Justin. Father, we thank you so much for what you're doing in our church. We're thankful for the teens that are reaching out to their friends and inviting them to church on Wednesday night for this Salvation Bible Study. We're so thankful for that. We just pray you'd help Brother Tim as he teaches, and pray that everything would go well tonight. Have a good discussion concerning what is sin. And so, Lord, we pray that you might open the hearts and the eyes of these young people that don't know Christ. Lord, that you might begin a work in their hearts and draw them to yourself. And Father, we thank you for the opportunity that our church has. Thank you for Brother Justin coming to preach tonight. Pray you'd help him and give him the message that we need tonight. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Pastor. On our way to services tonight, Ava was in the back seat and lost a tooth. And she lost one yesterday too, so I guess it's that time in her life to be losing some teeth. And it was kind of a weird situation because we don't participate in teeth festivities. And so the question was, what do you do with it? Well, one of the girls said, throw it out the window. And so she did. There's a lost tooth on the side of the road somewhere on the way to church. And I assume if you want to collect one, you can go and find it and add it to your collection. The only person that's ever told me they'd like to collect teeth was the dentist, so I guess he likes to. Maybe I'll let him know where it's at. But there's a small part of me that thought, no, we can't throw that out the window. But then there was a thought that comes, well, what are we going to do with it? What's the point of keeping it? Not really any value. Not something that we necessarily treasure as a memory. Definitely don't participate in the festivities, so don't need to get my wallet out. So I guess, throw it out the window. I don't know anything else to do. If my mom was here, she would probably be panicking because she's very sentimental, and she would want to keep it. Probably has all of my baby teeth still. I think she still has my dad's gallstones. She keeps everything, and I don't. So there'll be a lot of things being thrown away at some point later on down the future. But it's an interesting question when you're faced with this idea of what is the point. And we're going to wrestle with that a little bit tonight. And the main idea that I want to share with you is what's the point when the point doesn't seem worth it. And at the risk of being depressing or causing you to struggle, I don't want to do that. But I do want to share what the Lord's laid on my heart. And in preparation, it's kind of interesting how this has come to pass in my life. And so we're gonna start there. But in studying for this message tonight, we sat down with the girls this morning at the table like we always do. And I had been in the garage looking at this passage, and interestingly enough, we're looking at this man's life in Scripture and in our family time together. And so it was interesting how God just began last night directing my thoughts as to what would be on the radar for tonight, and then had no idea today would be the day it would be, and had no idea that other things would take place and transpire, and I would be faced with probably what I need to preach more than you need it. And so here I am to preach it anyways. So it's kind of interesting. But at the table this morning, I asked the girls this question. I said, have you ever felt like asking, or you do ask, what is the point? And what kind of situations cause you to think that or feel that? And there was quiet and silence at the table for a minute, and then answers started to come, and then I couldn't write fast enough because they were coming faster than I could write them down. And so these were some of the answers that my girls at the kitchen table gave this morning. It was this: it's, what's the point of learning stuff I'll never use? Examples of algebra and chemistry and trigonometry and those kind of things that is really good for you to learn. Another question that came is, why clean the house when it will just get dirty again? What's the point? Another one, why make my bed when no one will see it? Why should I keep my room clean if no one else goes in there? What's the point of trying out for track? The comment was made that she was in the right family because we are not a family of runners, and she shares that sentiment. So she was definitely not adopted or switched at birth. What's the point of cooking dinner if they will just complain about what I fix? Why do we go to church if we keep learning the same things? What's the point in going to school after the STAR test? It's a month of just doing nothing, wasting time. They watch movies that I don't necessarily care for and wish they wouldn't watch. They goof off. They waste time. It's just to get the hours in. And so it's like, what's the point? As soon as the STAR test is over, which was a couple weeks ago, school just goes to pot. But they have to go. So what's the point? And then the next question came is, what's the point in taking the STAR? Why do we take the STAR? Another question was, or another statement was, or question, I guess, what's the point in trying if you're just going to fail? What's the point in reading your Bible if you don't understand it? What's the point of listening to your teachers when other people don't? What's the point of life if you're just going to die? What's the point of learning if you wouldn't know any difference being dumb? I thought that was funny. I have my own list and struggle with these time to time. Why do I fix things just to struggle to fix more things tomorrow? That's what I do, just fix stuff all the time. And it gets old sometimes. Why do I try to be patient with people if they won't change anyways? What's the point of praying if it doesn't change anyone's life? I know it works for other Christians, but what's the point of faking it if it ain't working for me? Now, you may have heard some of those funny statements and some of them more serious statements, and you may become a little bit squeamish in hearing those questions, especially being so honest and them coming from my family. It may make you nervous. It may make you a little bit worried. I'm not sure how you feel about it. It tends to do that for me. You think of these questions, and when these kind of questions are asked, a lot of times I'll come back with a really good parental response. For instance, why do we have to go to school after the STAR test? I bet I've been asked that question 10 times in the last 2 weeks, every morning probably. And my answer is always, because it's good for you to do things you don't want to do. Or it's good for you to have to endure things that don't make sense to you because you're told to do them. And those are good and fair answers. I appreciate those answers. I still will probably use those answers. But we have these thoughts, and we want to curb this idea of what is the point? Well, what is the point when the point doesn't seem worth it? And so there's a passage in Scripture, and it's in the book of Ecclesiastes that we're going to go to. So I'm going to invite you to Ecclesiastes. And I want to share a little bit of this passage with you, and hopefully it's able to be an encouragement to you rather than a discouragement. I know the book of Ecclesiastes is probably navigated around in your Bible reading if you have a choice, because it just seems like doom, gloom, and despair. Seems like, why read that? I need some encouraging. I don't need discouraging. And I'll be honest with you, I feel the same. While you're turning there, on a daily basis, there is several things that I use. I've got a few examples of them here. I don't know if you know what these are. I've explained them a little bit just to help you. But this is what's called, let's just see if anybody knows. Does anybody know what this is called? Caliper. A measurer of some kind. That's right. It's a mic. It's sort of like a mic. It's a caliper. It's a digital caliper. This instrument, it'll actually measure to the 1,000th of an inch. Well, actually, the 0.5 of an inch is how precise this one will go. And just to give you a frame of reference, your hair is roughly 4 thousandths. So you divide a hair 4 times, and this will measure that precise. It's really helpful for a lot of different uses and issues, things that come up. And without this, I'd have a lot of sloppy holes and a lot of sloppy pins. Okay, so I use it a lot. It helps keep things, to know where you're at, to know what's going on. This is a similar family of instrument. It's called a tape measure. That was a little easier. And it doesn't quite measure down to the 1,000th of an inch. Just to give you a reference mark, it'll measure down to the 0.065 of an inch, I think. I think that's what it is. It's a 1/16th of an inch. That's as small as it will go. And use this quite a bit for bigger things, for things that, to measure the room or to measure how long a piece of metal is, or, to get a rough ballpark when rough is good enough. But even without this instrument, it would be hard to know what is accurate and what you need and how big of a piece of metal to cut and how far away that hole needs to be drilled. Or it would be difficult to do anything accurately and consistently without this kind of a measurement tool. Another instrument that I use, I just bought this one. This is the latest toy. I've only used it once, but this is what's called a thermal imaging camera. And what does is you can turn it on, and I'll turn it on and see if you can even see it, but somehow, I don't even know how to operate. Oh, right there. So basically what it does is it'll tell you how hot I am. I got this in the mail, and I was playing with it in the house, and I looked over at my wife, and I said, man, babe, this thing says you're really hot. Well, that's what it does, right? Thermal imaging. And you use this for lots of really fun things that I'm looking forward to using it for. Mainly to find hot spots in motors, equipment, hydraulics. Anytime there's a problem in a hydraulic system, you're going to find a hot spot there. And so it's very easy to decide where or determine kind of where your problem location is. And so the one time I've used it, it really helped out quite a bit. And I'm looking forward to it being more useful down in the future. And so that's another thing that I haven't used a lot, but I do use it. I've used it once. This is another thing that I use quite a bit of, and they come in different amounts of accuracy and definition. This is a fairly small one. It's a 200 psi pressure gauge. So I deal with a lot of hydraulics. Hydraulics is going to run around 4,000 to 5,000 psi, and so this gauge would not even become close to being able to handle that. But I use these for various things to measure pressures and to set different settings and make sure machines are working properly. And so I use all these instruments as sort of ways to guide and help me accomplish the goals that I want to accomplish. And Solomon is going to do something very similar for us tonight. And he's going to use his wisdom and some particular things that we'll look at here in just a minute, some goads and some nails. And he's going to help us, guide us in a direction that is profitable and is healthy for the long run, and will be beneficial to us when these seasons of what's the point when the point doesn't seem worth it comes along. And so, interesting, I'm finding myself needing this message. And so I'm preaching this more because I need it, not because I want to. But it is interesting how it is mooring my emotions and my thoughts throughout the day today, and how I have been had to rebound to this over and over and over again throughout the day today. And so we're going to look at this. Now, Ecclesiastes chapter 1, I just want to give you a little sampling. If you're not familiar with the book of Ecclesiastes, I want to show you sort of the vibe that's going on, and this is going to be very much why Ecclesiastes gets such a bad reputation. But I want you to be aware of how Solomon is thinking. Now, Solomon is the wisest man in the world. He was given the wisdom to how to deal with people by God, and he was incredibly wise. He was very accomplished as a man and as a king, as a leader in Israel, and he served God a lot of his years, and then he went away from God a lot of his years, and then he ended up coming back to God at the end of his years. And in doing so, he gained a lot of experience that would help him write not only this book, but the book of Proverbs, which is plumb full of his wisdom nuggets that he gathered up along the journey of life, okay? And so, having got through this life and lived every pleasure that he wanted, having indulged himself in every benefit and every success and every purpose that he could find and think of, he comes to the end of that season and that journey, if you will, and he makes a statement throughout the book of Ecclesiastes that you're probably familiar with, and it's the statement that it all is vanity. Vanity and vexation of spirit. And those two words, or that phrase, is really where the book of Ecclesiastes gets such a bad reputation for. Just stay away from that. That's just a discouraging book. And it can be, but there's a point to it, and it's a point that I'm convinced, just by personal experience throughout today. Other other things as well. But right now in my life today is where this is like, man, Solomon is helpful. And it helps to have this book. And so I'm going to show you just a little bit of the book. Okay, so chapter 1 is just going to give you a little bit of flavor of the book. I'm going to read it fairly quickly. I don't know how much I'll explain, but hopefully you can follow along. I just want you to feel what Solomon is feeling as we go through this book. He says this, the words of the preacher, to himself, Solomon, the son of David, king in Jerusalem. And here he goes, right off the bat. Vanity of vanities, saith the preacher, vanities of vanities. All is vanity. Like, man, Solomon, like, must have had a bad day. Probably. You ever had a bad day? Is me and Solomon the only one? Oh, phew, okay. Vanity of all vanity, all is vanity. What profit hath a man of all his labor which he taketh under the sun? One generation passeth away, and another generation cometh, but the earth abideth forever. He's saying, you're going to live, you're going to die. Somebody else is going to live after you, they're going to die. Repeat the cycle. Earth just keeps on going on and on. What's the point? You get what he's feeling, what he's asking, what he's thinking? The sun also ariseth, and the sun goeth down, hasteth to his place where he arose. The wind goeth toward the south, and turneth about unto the north. It whirleth about continually, and the wind returneth again according to his circuits. I think he was from the Panhandle. Comes, it goes. All the rivers run into the sea, yet the sea is not full. Unto the place from whence the rivers come, thither they return again. All things are full of labor. Man cannot utter it. The eye is not satisfied with seeing, nor the ear filled with hearing. He's saying, like, it doesn't matter how much things you see, how many things you hear about. It's never enough. What's the point? That's what he's asking. That's what he's making statements about. The thing that hath been, it is that which shall be, and that which is done is that which shall be done. And there is no new thing under the sun. Is there anything whereof it may be said, see, this is new? It hath been already of old time, which was before us. There is no remembrance of former things, neither shall there be any remembrance of things that are to come with those that shall come after. He's saying if you go back in 2 or 3 generations ago and interview your grandparents or your great-grandparents, the struggles and the things you face in life, they faced in life too. We just tend to be myopic in our life because we only have experienced our life. And we fail to think that it's all new for us. But it's not. It's repetitive. And that's the point that he's making. It says in verse 12, I, the preacher, was king over Israel in Jerusalem, and I gave my heart to seek and search out by wisdom concerning all things that are done under heaven. This sore travail hath God given to the sons of man to be exercised therewith. He's saying that I have struggled, I've searched for wisdom, I've searched for answers, I've tried to answer the question, what's the point? When the point doesn't seem worth it. And it has been a struggle for me. That's what he's saying. And yet God has seemingly orchestrated that would be the path man would take. He's broadening this. It's not just his experience, just because of who he is. This is a human experience that God allows and even orchestrates to accomplish something. Seems a little counterintuitive in my brain, but that's what Solomon is saying. Verse 14, I have seen all the works that are done under the sun, and behold, all is vanity and vexation of spirit. That which is crooked cannot be made straight, and that which is wanting cannot be numbered. I commune with my own heart, saying, Lo, I am come to great estate, and have gotten more wisdom than all they that have been before me in Jerusalem. That's a big statement. He's saying that he's lived enough life and had enough experiences in life that he has more wisdom in life than anybody else in Jerusalem, ever. And he knows it, and yet his conclusion is still vanity and vexation of spirit. Verse 17, I gave my heart to know wisdom and to know madness and folly. Sometimes I just want to be mad. Not like angry mad, but just be crazy. Go to the insane asylum. Then it wouldn't matter. Responsibilities would go away. I wouldn't have to deal with people no more. The machines wouldn't matter. Whatever happens at the bank, they can come collect it all because I'm in the insane asylum. That's the frustration. That's the feeling that Solomon is having. And I have felt that before and struggle with that today. I gave my heart to know wisdom and to know madness and folly. I perceive that this also is vexation of spirit. It's like it doesn't matter what I feel. It still leaves me longing for something else. It still leaves me empty. Do you feel what he's feeling? I think there's one more verse. In verse 1, chapter 1, for in much wisdom, this is interesting. I would have never understood this as a teenager or as a young adult, but now I can understand. I wish I could go back to not knowing. For in much wisdom is much grief, and he that increaseth knowledge increaseth sorrow. It seems like the more you know in life, the more you get frustrated. Because people that don't know, don't care to know, don't choose to make the right decisions, you want so much more for them. You want so much more for your life. And yet the more you learn, the more you understand, the more you realize that this is pretty well life. This is the cycle. In this book, the word vanity, I believe, is used 35 times. It's a lot. Now, vanity, it's an interesting word because I think, and maybe this is going to help take your mind in a shift with me, okay? And I'm trying to shift my mind. I know this was my first thought and response was that vanity is necessarily a negative word. Like it just seems like it's a depressing word. It feels like it's like if you was going to color words on a color scale, then red would be anger, blue would be happy, yellow would be excited, right? I mean, you see how that goes? So then if you was going to color vanity, you'd color it black. Like this is Eeyore's favorite word of the day, kind of a thing, every day, right? And so this vanity, I want to take that out of your mind, that it's necessarily a just completely bad connotated word, but this is what it means. It's just simply being honest with the thoughts, and it means this. It means a vapor or a breath. Now, just think about this, a breath. Are you thankful for that breath you just took? Yeah, but it didn't last long. You got to take another one. You've probably taken hundreds since you've been in this room alone. So it doesn't mean that it's without purpose or meaning or has no value. It just means that it's very short-lived, okay? It means something temporary. And it can be being good or bad, makes no difference. It just speaks of the temporariness of an object, okay? So if you take your hand, do an exercise with me. Take your hand and breathe out heavily so that you can feel that. Did you feel it? Where is it? It's gone. Like, there it goes. No, you can't even trace it beyond your hand or what it affects. Like it's so short-lived that the immediacy of it is about all the impact it makes. Its value is short-lived. That's what he's saying when he says vanity. He's saying it's just a breath. Like it comes and goes so fast, and it has no significance. And that's what brings about this question of what's the point when the point doesn't seem worth it? When everything you do, everything you work hard for, everything you strive for, everything that frustrates you and you endure, everything you go through, everything that happens just seems like it's gone. And then you got to just take another one again and another one and again and another one again. It's this cycle that wears on and on and on. And so he's using this word. Now, I don't know if this sounds familiar to you. James has a very similar passage. Whereas you know not what ye shall be on the morrow. For what is your life? It is even a vapor that appeareth for a little time and then vanisheth away. Now, if to us, we're like, what? No, 80 years is a long time. But to God and to eternity, 80 years is gone. And Solomon is aware of this. He's observing this. And so he goes on a journey, and the language continues. Thankfully, we're not going to read more chapters, and I got a few places I want to take you, but we're not going to read extended lengths of Scripture in Ecclesiastes. But he takes you on this journey of this vanity journey. Like he explores every option and everything possible, and all of his conclusion, it always comes back to this idea that it's temporary. It was fun for a season. I went on a date with a woman. It was fun for the evening, but then the morning came and it was over with. I mean, and Solomon did that a lot. Like 1,000 wives, who knows how many first dates he had to go on. Everything he indulged himself in, everything he did, everything he tried, everything he pursued, it was gone. Like, what's the point? Like, he may have enjoyed it for a little bit, but it didn't last. And that's his observation. There's another word that he uses, and it's the vexation of spirit. And it comes up in that same phrase a lot with vanity. And vexation, that also kind of has a negative connotation word to it, but it just simply means to long for, to strive after, to feed upon, grasping after. So what he's saying is like, you ever had a really good meal? Like a really good meal. I'm hungry right now, so I could a sandwich sounds pretty good right now. But my wife made me breakfast this morning. She makes these Egg McMuffins that are amazing. I look forward to them. I love them, 2 of them, and the egg runs out and gets messy and all. I love it. But, about 10 minutes worth of eating, and it's gone. As much as I enjoyed it, it's gone. And if I'm not careful, I want another one, right? Tomorrow, I want another one. I want more. I've never been to a steak restaurant and ordered my ribeye, left because it was so amazing, and never went back because I had enough. I was wanting more. I love steak. And I love eating steak. I could eat it, I think, every day. I don't know. I never tried, but I don't think it would get old. You always want more. And so this vexation of spirit, it's this idea that you indulge yourself, you go for what you're thinking, and then you get done with it, and it's like, I want more. It didn't satisfy me. It didn't fulfill me. It didn't bring a fullness to my life. I'm just left with rinse, repeat, and do it again. Rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. Like it's just over and over again. That's the idea. So these 2 words, they pop up a lot in the book of Ecclesiastes. So I want to take you to chapter 3. Now he's going to give, in chapter 3, he gives a little bit of a break, and maybe even a little bit of a glimpse at a theme that is going to find its way throughout the book in different various ways. And then he's going to punch it home at the end of the book with his conclusion of the whole thing, and it's going to make more sense then. But we're going to take this little stop in Ecclesiastes chapter 3, and it says this in verse 14, I know that whatsoever God doeth, it shall be forever. He knows that. He's sure that when God does something, it's forever. And he thinks in a forever terminology and mindset. He says this, nothing can be put to it. In other words, you can't add anything to what God's doing. You can't change it, in other words. He says you can't put anything to it, nor anything taken from it. And God doeth it, that men should fear before him. So he's saying this, he's saying that God exists outside of time. He lives in a forever world, has been always, and in that place, because of his power, because of who he is, he can do anything he wants, and you can't change that. You can't, as much as some of our political friends would want to, you can't do anything to this planet to make it go away or make it better. It is what it is. God made it the way it is, and it's going to be that way. Now, I do believe we need to take care of it and be good stewards of it, but the fact that we would be a total annihilation and the planet would be in total ruins is not going to happen because you can't change what God does. Does that make sense? That's his thought process that he's unfolding. And he says that he does this because he wants man to realize who they are in relation to God. He wants them to fear God. That's going to be one of the first key words that we're going to see. And so he does this so that men would fear him. And then verse 15 is a really interesting hint, if you will, at the point of the whole book that we're going to look at more clearly in chapter 12. And it's this, you got to think with this one to follow through this one with this one. But it says this, that which hath been is now. So he's saying things don't change, right? Everything that's been before, it's just like that now. And that which is to be hath already been. So everything that's coming in your tomorrow and in your next week, it's already been. It exists somewhere in someone else's life. It exists maybe in your life. It's the same. The pattern continues, and yet God is outside of that, and God designs it that way, and God allows it to be that way. And somehow or another, we're going to find that God has his hands in this never-ending cycle of life. It's a really important thing to remember. And then he says this, and God requireth that which is past. God holds you accountable to what is past. He doesn't hold you accountable for what hasn't happened yet, but he does hold you accountable for what has passed. And so he's setting the stage for this idea of the purpose and the point that is worth giving your life to when the point doesn't seem worth it. It's these three words. It's fear and obedience and judgment, accountability. So hang on to that. We'll look at that a little bit more. So you fast forward through the book, and he keeps on this discourse, and these things pop up here and there, and you'll find more and more opportunities to see them along the way. Ecclesiastes chapter 12. Go all the way to the end of the book. He takes 12 chapters, basically, and after like chapter 6, I think it was chapter 6, it turns into more of like a Proverbs style thing where he's just reciting this Proverbs that he's learned, and it's like the book of Proverbs 2.0. There's a lot of that kind of language sprinkled in with this whole vanity and vexation thing, and what actually matters and what doesn't matter, and this is better than that, and he goes through this whole discourse. And so then he gets to the end of the book, and basically what I want to just camp out with you just for a couple of minutes, or a few minutes, is Ecclesiastes chapter 12 and verse number 9 through 14. And it says, and moreover, because the preacher was wise, he still taught the people knowledge. So I'll be honest with you, this verse is a lot of the reason why I'm preaching tonight. Because I didn't want to. But he still did anyways. He still taught the people knowledge. He still wrote down his wisdom so that we could glean from it. Yea, he gave good heed and sought out and set in order many proverbs. He didn't quit. He didn't give up. He endured, even though probably didn't feel like it. The preacher sought to find out acceptable words, and that which was written was upright. In other words, it was good. It was good that he wrote this. This is not a book that's, let's just stay away from that book because it's really depressing. No, God says that this is an upright book. This is a good book. It's a part of our scriptures for a reason, and probably because a lot of us, most of us, all of us, can identify with these thoughts from time to time and have these struggles just like Solomon did, and probably are going to continue to have these struggles and thoughts. And he says this, even words of truth. And the verse 11 is an interesting word, verse. It says, the words of the wise are as goads. You all know what a goad is? Anybody ever used a goad before? I like the goads with batteries. Cattle prod, right? It's an instrument that usually at this time they didn't have batteries, no Energizer bunnies, so they have sharp sticks or pointed metal, and they would poke the rear end of an animal, and it'd flinch and they'd get them along, right? People, cattle industry uses these. Anybody in the animal industry uses some sort of a goad to cause people to move along. And so he says, the words of the wise are as goads. They're like cattle prods. So all these words, all this stuff in Ecclesiastes is like a goad. Okay, hold on to that. And as nails fastened by the masters of assemblies, which are given from one shepherd. Now, I didn't have a lot of time to research this and find it out, and so I'm just winging what I think and what it probably means. But it's very similar to what we call like a tent stake. You think about when you're going to camp and it's windy, and you got to drive that tent stake down in the ground. Why? You don't want your tent taking flight in the middle of the night and you ending up in Oz with Dorothy. You'd like to stay right where you put your tent. And so you stretch that out and you stake it down. Another option or another thought is that I think, and this is not verified by anything the internet has to offer or commentaries, but you know how when you have an animal and you put a stake down in the ground and they can kind of wander, but they can't go any further than that nail. They say that elephants, they train them from when they're young by driving a nail in the ground and tying them with a rope to that, and they learn throughout their life that they can't pull that stake up, and then when they become 20 ton and that stake could do nothing to hold them back, their mind is shaped by what that nail is. So that's what I think this nail has. That's the idea trying to be communicated. I am confident of that. And so he says that they're giving these nails fastened by the masters of assemblies, which are given from one shepherd. And that's an interesting allusion to the great shepherd. I think that Solomon is paying tribute to his great shepherd. And the Lord is my shepherd, as his father would have said. And very much on his heart and very much on his language in this book. And having come to this place in his life, the great shepherd is very much in his heart and in his mind. And so I think that is an allusion to an illustration of his great shepherd. And he says this, and further, by these, my son, be admonished. Of making many books there is no end, and much study is a weariness of the flesh. He says, Solomon, the wisest man in the world, leaves the book of Proverbs to his son, basically instructing them in all these wise things that he learned along the way of life. And Ecclesiastes is no different. He wants to instruct his son in things and maybe even save him some heartache that he had to go through if he could learn from the wisdom of his father. And so he's presenting it as that such, and he's explaining there's much wisdom to be learned. There's so much to glean from. There's no end to the books that are written, and much study. You can wear yourself out seeking wisdom. Now, verse 13. This is the 13 and 14 are going to be the main point that he's getting us to, and it's this: let us hear the conclusion of the whole matter. You ready? Fear God and keep his commandments. For this is the whole duty of man. You know what the point is when the point doesn't seem worth it? It's these two ideas: to fear God and keep his commandments. And that doesn't seem very helpful. But it's really interesting that this is his conclusion. Wisest man in the world's conclusion is to fear God and keep his commandments. And that is the whole purpose of your existence. That is the point that's worth living for. Nothing else will answer that question. What is the point when the point doesn't seem worth it? Nothing else will answer that question except for these two thoughts: fearing God and keeping his commandments. This is the whole duty of man. And then there's this idea tagged onto this and why that's so important. For God shall bring every work into judgment, with every secret thing, whether it be good or whether it be evil. He's saying you need to fear God, you need to keep his commandments, because you will be given an account. You will be held accountable for everything that is past, to rob his words from chapter 3. When you stand at the judgment seat of Christ, it's not for your salvation, but it's to judge this life and how faithful you were as a servant to live this life with the idea of fearing God and keeping his commandments. And he's going to hold you accountable, whether you did good or whether you did bad. He's going to require us to be accountable. So he gives us all this stuff because this is the purpose. This is the point. And these goads, I started off expressing, and maybe you're feeling like, well, where's the encouragement in this? It's this. Without those goads, that animal would never get to where it needs to go. Right? So without the goads of life, you would never get to where you are needing to go. And I'm going to tell you where God wants you to go. He wants you to answer this question: will you fear him and will you keep his commands? And will you do it because he's going to hold you accountable? Those three ideas plague my mind when it's vanity of vanities and vexation of spirit. When I want to quit, the reality of who God is puts a guardrail in my life so I don't just drive off the cliff. Who is God? And that's why it's so important to know who God is. Because if you have a shallow understanding of who God is, you might just drive off the cliff. If you don't know who he is, you're not committed to obeying what he says. If you try to obey what he says and not know who he is, you'll just become legalistic and prideful, and you'll actually stray from what God was trying to accomplish in your life to begin with. He wants you to obey because you know who he is. So it becomes so central to our life meaning something and not getting lost in vanity of vanities and vexation of spirit is to answer these two questions and then realize that how I live my life, I'll give an account to God. So these goads, this feeling, these things that you feel, and he unpacks a ton of them. There's probably a ton more you could unpack. But when you feel this way, like what's the point? When the point doesn't seem worth it. When that feeling is there, that is actually a gift from God. And this is, today I'm like, I don't think so. I don't like this feeling. I don't like this struggle. And it seems like this cloud and this struggle has come over and over and over again in abundance and way more than I want it to, and I like it. And it's here. And I don't know exactly how to fix it. But then I realized that God don't want me to fix it. God actually wants this goad in my life because it makes you go, what is the point? Why am I not just going to quit and give up? The answer is because of what I know about God. Because of, if I do, I would have to answer with Paul when he expressed that if the resurrection wasn't true, that he would be most miserable of a preacher. If who God is not real, it's pretty pointless. But Solomon understands, and there's several places in there, I wish we had more time to unpack, that he actually recognizes that even though he feels despair and he feels hopeless and he feels like there's no point, that God actually brings a point to his life. And God brings a point to man's life. And it's like that safety rope. It just keeps him from falling off the edge when life just seems like, what's the point? And so he's tied to this goad, and this goad provokes him to answer the question, who is God? What does he require for me to do? And how do I want to be judged in eternity? So let me ask you this question. What is it that you know about God that keeps you from falling off the cliff? And the closer you get to the cliff, I would encourage you, you probably need to shore up what you know about God. One of the most important reasons that God gave us this book, from the very beginning to the very end, I think it's probably the most important reason, is so that you can know him. Because without it, you wouldn't have a clue who he is, and we would all drove off the cliff a long time ago. We would have just vanity of vanities and vexation of spirit and lived our life and either partied it up and died trying or ended up in an insane asylum. That's life without God. And so he gives us this book so that we can know him, so that we can have the fear of God in our life. He gives us these goads and this instruction so that we can be better off and aligned with what is proper and what is right. It's a tool, if you will, that God uses to cause our hearts to correct. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. I didn't feel like being here tonight. But I feel better. You may not, but I do. I showed up, I'm running the media, got all that set up, and then the songs start playing. And that's not how I feel. Can't even remember what the songs were now. Anybody remember what the songs were? My Jesus, I love thee. I'm like, do I? Not really. But what's the alternative? I'm not willing to not love Jesus, so okay. And there's one that's something about walking every day just gets sweeter and sweeter than the day before. I'm like, baloney. I don't know if you ever have those kind of days. I'm finding I have them more and more, and I don't know if I like that. but they're goads. They're to provoke me to go, why is your walk with Jesus not sweeter than it was the day before? What is there the point of life? And so what I did is I have a habit of choosing habit over feeling. I try to do that in my life. I don't always do that, but I preach not because I feel like preaching. I felt like not preaching. I felt like, who am I to preach this? I don't even have this in my own life. Like I can't even muster this today. I'm struggling. And yet I preach anyways because I have a responsibility. You didn't come just to sit here and not hear nothing. But also I need to share it with you, and I need to share it with myself. I also have a habit of singing, even though I'm not the greatest of singers. So I'm faced with a question while I'm clicking the button for you to watch the slides on the screen. Will I sing? Yes, I will sing. I didn't sing it with like gusto, like I may have other times, because I didn't feel it, but I sang anyways, because I fear God, and He's instructed me to sing. And can I tell you, by the time we sang and I got ready to preach, I was at peace with preaching. Wasn't too excited about it yet, but I'm still not just thoroughly thrilled by it, but it's not as bad as it was. Why? Because I understand who God is. I mean, he's still who He is when I don't feel like it. I don't know if that's your theology or not, but that's mine. And had to wrestle with that in the sound booth a little bit. But as I obeyed, because I fear Him and I know that I'm going to give an account for tonight. For what I preached, I know I'm going to give an account for standing at the sound booth and clicking through the words, and whether I engaged in worship of Him corporately with you, or I pouted my way through and just clicked the words. I didn't have to sing. Nobody was holding me accountable to singing back there. But I sang because I fear God, and I want to keep His commandments. And I know that I'm going to be judged for everything that passes before I stand at that judgment seat of Christ. Will you reject your goads? Or will you allow God to lead you to a better place where He's wanting you to become more aware of who He is? What you know about God is worthless until it's tested. It's not just a Sunday school lesson. That's not where Solomon learned all these things. What he knew about God was learned in the hard, difficult vanity and vexation of life. And yet he still came out saying, God is worth serving. Will your theology be tested by goads, or will you run from them? Let me pray with you. Father, thank you for a passage like this. I didn't see all this coming last night. I don't know why, but I'm grateful for the help that you've given me, how you've ministered to me, and just even being here tonight. Not wanting to be, but I am, and you've been faithful again. You said you would be. That's a nail. That's a stake that we can hang on to and rely on, that you are always faithful to be good to us, to minister to us, to give us strength and grace when we need it, when we don't feel like it. Thank you for that nail that we can hold on to. Thank you for the goads that they're not comfortable, and they're almost borderline depression sometimes. Depends on how severe they are. But thank you for them, because they cause me to question, what do I really think about God, and what am I going to hold on to? And what is going to survive in my theology when life is tough? Thank you for that. I don't know how I can say that except by your grace. Thank you for the opportunity to preach anyways. Thank you for not responding the way I would respond to me. And thank you for not throwing me away. Lord, I love you. grateful for who you are. Help me to be more obedient, to be more mindful of my judgment that comes. It's in your name I pray. Amen. I'll get my junk out of the way, and then Pastor can take over.
Well, thank you for the message. I appreciate it. And a lot of thoughts. One of the things I was thinking early in the message is my mind went to Romans chapter 8. I put my ribbon on that. You know, I was thinking that if it wasn't for vanity and vexation of spirit, how would we have any hope or turning to Christ? And he tells us in Romans 8:18, "For I reckon the sufferings of this present time are not worthy to be compared with the glory which shall be revealed in us. For the earnest expectation of the creature waited for the manifestation of the sons of God, for the creature was made subject to vanity." I want you to notice that. We were made subject to vanity. Not willingly. It says, "But by reason of him who had subjected the same in hope." And he goes on and talks about we're saved by hope, and we groan and travail with the whole creation waiting for the redemption of our bodies. And so it kind of makes us long for heaven, right? Long to be home with Jesus. And appreciate the message. Just a couple of things.